The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.
Let's go! What's that? It's gonna be a football game tonight now. No doubt. It's gonna be a football game here. Okay. I done been here before. All right, let's go, baby.
9. Rushing 4, ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground, and it's still on the ground. Picked up by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line. Von Miller did it again.
Alabama back on top of the college football world.
Ladies and gentlemen, football to the max.
Your host, Sean Garmer, Gary Vaughn, and Randy Isbell.
Hello and welcome to another Football to the Max. Yes, we're doing on a different night this week because sometimes sleep is good. Yeah, at least we get to talk about these ever so controversial college football playoff rankings, the first one of the year. We also got some NFL news to talk about. Percy Harvin, of all people, decided he wants to come back into the NFL, and Jamie Collins is now a Cleveland Brown. I don't think I would have said that a week ago. But, yeah, so I am your host, Sean Garmer, and of course, with me, the co-hosts, Mr. Gary Vaughn and Randy Isbell. How was your Halloween, guys?
It was good, spent some time with the family, me and my wife and my mother-in-law, she wanted to join us, go trick-or-treating, did that, and had a little fun. My father-in-law scared lots of kids, loved to terror, that was a blast, and kid got lots of candy, so it was a good one overall. It's one of my favorite holidays, so I have to say I did enjoy myself.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites too. I went out and slaved out the child, and he brought home me lots of candy, and I gave him his 3 pieces, and we enjoyed the rest. So
I love that. Yeah, there you go.
But he got a little lippy and said he wanted a raise. He wanted as much candy as the kid next door, and I traded him off to the next state. So
God.
He said, sorry, we traded you for a future draft pick, so, yeah.
I traded him for my future child that I've been
having. Yeah, the future one.
Sorry, kid. Youth is always precious.
You got too old.
Yeah. You're going to start asking for too much. Yeah, your contract's way too high.
Yeah. But Daddy, I want Von Miller candy. No, shut up.
Yep. We can't ever pay you what you deserve. We just move you along. But anyway, so we will also be talking about some NFL Week 8 takeaways as well, just kind of things that kind of jumped out to us from Week 8. Maybe talk about some certain games if we want to or not. But so let's get into these college football playoff rankings. They came out today. You have your Alabama number 1, Clemson number 2, Michigan number 3. They're undefeated 8-0. They've been, Clemson hasn't always been dominant, but they've beat the teams that they're supposed to, and they beat both of the big teams that they've played. So that counts. And Michigan has been beating people. So and Alabama's just been doing what Alabama does. So the interesting thing is you have, instead of Washington, who is also undefeated at 8-0, they're not number 4. Not Ohio State, who happened to lose to Penn State there in overtime. Not Louisville, who only lost to Clemson by a touchdown. You have Texas A&M, who got beat pretty well by Alabama, and this is probably going to get fixed. It's only the first one, but this just seems like, we had to have a shock.
Yeah, I kind of felt like that, didn't it? It was kind of weird. This came out of left field for me. I did not expect that at all. I mean, I really honestly felt like Washington was going to get the 4th spot. I mean, there's a few other teams that I think that I would probably maybe possibly put up there, but I don't know. This seems like a setup for failure. Like, let's choose the team that's good, but probably not good enough to make it the rest of this year being undefeated, or will lose, maybe a big game in the future. So, I don't know. I just kind of feel like they kind of set them up for failure here.
Well, I mean, let's be honest, though. They only got Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Texas, San Antonio, and LSU at the end.
I still think Ole Miss is a team that could sneak up on them, and LSU is not terrible. I mean, Leonard Fournette is not a bad running back. I mean, he could come in there and run the clock down and take them down.
Listen, you guys, I think, are taking way too much out of this, thinking that, they put Texas A&M up here just to create controversy. They put Texas A&M up there because, yes, Washington's undefeated, but go and look at Washington's schedule. They played Rutgers, Idaho, Portland State. They've played 2 ranked teams this whole time. The Pac-12 is down this year. Now, at the end of the day, if they go undefeated and they go out and they beat a Washington State and then they beat a possible Colorado or Utah in the Pac-12 championship game and they go undefeated, they're going to be a top 4 team. But right now, after 8 games, they haven't played anybody. Their strength of schedule is in the 50s. You look at Texas A&M, 4 of their 7 wins have been against ranked teams at the time. Their one loss is against the number 1 team who is head and shoulders above everyone else right now. So that's why they put them there. The problem with Texas A&M is even if they run the table, say they win these last 4, as you said, LSU can be a bit sneaky. Ole Miss is not that bad either. They're not even going to make the SEC championship game. They're in the same division as Alabama. And Alabama would have to lose twice for them to reach that game. So they have 0 chance of making the playoffs. But as of right now, I have no problem with the committee going, they are the 4th best team. Things will straighten out. It's basically like a preseason poll, which we always hate to do, for college football. It's their first one. And right now, Texas A&M, to me, could be considered a top 4 team. I did not rank them there, but I can't really disagree with it because when you go down and you look at the schedules, Washington so far hasn't really played anybody, and the Pac-12 is basically a mess.
Yeah. And I don't really disagree with that completely. The one thing I'll say is you make good points about Washington's schedule. So, yeah, I could even kind of say, you know what, you're right. But I look at a team like Ohio State, who they lost by 3 points against Penn State. And then you have Texas A&M, who was pretty much blown out by Alabama, which, that's a really good team, the top team. So, maybe that's where they're going. But I still think that Ohio State, to me, is still better the team than Texas A&M.
Well, again, I think if all teams run the table, which is impossible because Ohio State and Michigan play each other, Ohio State will pass Texas A&M in the end. But you look at their schedule, they've beaten 2 ranked teams. Yes, they had the loss against Penn State, who had surprised everybody, and they have Penn State 12th, I believe, in their rankings, which is a little high for where I had them, but I have no problem with it. They've, completely surprised everybody this year. But again, they've only played 2 ranked teams. But on their schedule, they have Nebraska next. They have Michigan State, who's always tough, and they have the Michigan game as well as the Big Ten championship game. So, yes, they're behind Texas A&M at this point, but it's not like it's locked in stone. It's not like if Texas A&M runs the table that they're not going to be able to get past. But as of right now, their strength of schedule, their resume to this point is better than Ohio State and Washington, in my opinion. So I have no problem with it.
Yeah, and again, I mean, I think it's fine to an extent, but I kind of feel like they set them up for failure. Kind of like what you're saying here, Randy. You're saying, well, eventually they're going to get passed up, and it's almost like I felt like that they were doing this on purpose. That way they could have some change up.
I still think that like you said, Gary. Look, nobody would be talking about this if Washington was number 4. You know why? Because there's nothing to talk about. They're the 4 undefeated teams. They deserve to be number 1 through 4, and whatever. They can play with this, and they can make all the points that Randy just made, and say, okay, well, let's put on number 4 because this will get people talking. This will get this thing in the news. This will get this thing where ESPN can have an hour thing about Texas A&M being in the number 4 and Ohio State and Louisville being 6 and 7, and whatever. Which you can make the case for Louisville deserving to be there as well with. Who, again, they only lost by a touchdown at Clemson, and they've beaten everybody else, and they whooped Florida State, who gave Clemson all they could handle, so, and really should have won that game if that stupid call had been made that was made, but, referees like to give things away sometimes. It's okay. But, it's just, that's one of these things. It's humans are going to make these decisions, and just like with the basketball one, we're not always going to be in favor of it, but they're not ever going to. It's a Power 5 team against a Power 5 team. Washington runs the table and wins a championship. They're going in over Texas A&M, who's not going to win a championship. Ohio State's not going to win a championship unless they beat Michigan, and then Michigan loses, or Michigan loses again. Mm-hmm. So, and
if Ohio State beats Michigan, they will be the East representatives. They'll both have one loss, and Ohio State will have had the tiebreaker. So, unless Penn State also runs the table, and then you have that 3-way tie with all of them only one loss against each other, and then I don't know what the tiebreaker is for the Big Ten. A lot of them are usually ranking based, but we'll see how that goes. But
yeah, it's look at whose bank account's bigger, and then they'll pick that team.
Let's not go too crazy with this by now, but interesting that Wisconsin and Auburn too above Nebraska, so that's an interesting one, too. Penn State being as high as they are. Baylor being ahead of West Virginia. I know the difference of pointage, I guess, matters there, but yeah. So.
And lots of interesting things. Like you're pointing out here. I think Randy kind of said it a minute ago that Penn State were definitely ranked a little bit higher than I think any of us really honestly thought they probably should be. Yeah, great job beating Ohio State, but at the end of the day, I don't know that they're really going to be able to beat a lot of the teams even ranked lower than them. And then I look at that Baylor ranking, and I'm happy with it because I think honestly, I could be completely wrong, but I still think they're a really good team. They just kind of had a weird, terrible game when it came to playing Texas.
They forgot that they could pass the ball.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, I don't know. I think they were trying to be too cute, and it just didn't work.
I was like, how do you forget that this is what you do? You forget to pass the ball on the Texas team that can't stop anyone? What is your game plan here?
they love to run their quarterback. The quarterback loves to run, and that doesn't always work in the end.
Yeah, I know the most disappointing thing for you is you had to rank Oklahoma State. So
it was until they actually proved something to me, and that's good. They won a game that mattered, and I felt like they controlled it. And West Virginia's been a really good team, so I'm okay with ranking them now. But I was not okay with ranking them when they were not playing good football, and people were giving them credit where they didn't deserve it. Now they kind of proved that they deserve at least to be somewhere in the talk.
I'm just glad Washington State is in there.
Yeah. God, it just made me laugh. I was like, okay, if they win this game, they're going to get ranked. And then they showed the worst first half of football, just getting completely just blown out the door. on national TV. It's on ESPN2. Not very few football games are going on at this time. A lot of people are switching over after the really close Florida State Clemson game, which was fun to watch. And that first half was so atrocious. But that's why I like this team. They can explode for so many points so fast that they're never out of it. Just a couple big plays, and it took, 8 minutes? And the entire first half was completely washed away. And then it was a whole new ball game there in the second half, and they were able to hold off for a victory.
Right. And Western Michigan just whooped the Ball State today. So they are still undefeated. And sadly for them, it doesn't matter. If they're probably undefeated, they're not going to be going anywhere but maybe a Fiesta Bowl or something like that. But
nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
Well, that's what happens when the Power 5 controls things. But that's okay. Because you really should have 6 or 8 team playoff at this point. But it is what it is. So, I mean, unless y'all got something else you want to say about these playoff ranking things. I mean, more to come later.
Yeah, I was going to say, we have a lot more coming up, and I'll be really curious to see how things shake out after this next weekend.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, any of the games you guys want to talk about from the weekend or anything before we move it along to the NFL side of things?
We already talked about Baylor. That was a really disappointing loss. I'm trying to think of any other games that are really, to me, kind of stood out. That really
West
was a big
Virginia
deal.
getting beat the way they did, to me, stood out because we talked about their defense. It was supposed to be about their defense, and they're sitting there making turnovers, and then they can't stop Oklahoma State either. So that was a bit surprising. That's just like the first time you play a big-time Big 12 opponent, you lose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this weekend for college football really came down to me, and it was the big story that everyone talked about after was just, so many of these undefeated teams coming into this week had road matchups that, they needed to survive, and a lot of them didn't. I mean, you saw Washington being able to hold off Utah in a really close Pac-12 game. That Clemson-Florida State game was one of the better football games I've seen all year. Delvin Cook for Florida State is just a beast. You hand him the ball and just watch him just make people look like they're walking. He's that fast. I mean, that game was great. But then you look at the teams, that struggled to get it done. Nebraska, who I thought was going to have problems with Wisconsin, and I didn't think the game was even going to be that close. But it gets into overtime. Wisconsin misses the extra point after they score their touchdown. Nebraska has a shot and is unable to convert there. You guys had talked about Baylor, but the big one to me was Boise State. I mean, yes, they were on the road, but it was just to Wyoming. We talked about it, in the preview that they were 10-0 against Wyoming. You thought this was just going to be, yes, it might be a little bit closer because it's on the road, but I never thought that they were going to lose this game. It was my number 10 confidence in the college pick'em, and they go out there and it's close, and they do the unthinkable where they give it to the quarterback who drops the ball and it gets kicked into the end zone for safety, and they lose the game by 2. It was just the most ridiculous thing I'd seen. So a lot of stories going on. Boise State, to me, one of the bigger non-stories where people aren't talking, because that helps Western Michigan get to one of those January bowl games that they might not have because Boise State was slotted for one of those spots.
Yeah, and they've been flirting around with losing in the past 3 or 4 weeks, so this was kind of like karma for them.
Yeah. One other game I do want to mention real quick is, Navy did get beat by South Florida, and I kind of been on board with South Florida, and I kind of think a few weeks I did kind of sneak them in the bottom of our rankings on my end, but really people were not sure, but I think that kind of proved that they're not a bad team. They're a team that deserves to be looked at least and considered. So, gotta give them credit.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, We talked about that if they beat Navy, they would be in that conversation, and they certainly were. Just it's kind of like when all those top teams lose, and they don't lose by a whole lot. How far can you really drop them? So
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't even rank South Florida because of that reason. You're right.
yeah. I mean, and then you have some of the other ones that won, so it's like, well, you got to even this out. It's a rather big conundrum there with that. I mean, I don't have one off the top of my head right now that I think we kind of talked about some of the big ones. The Washington State one, we're waiting for that game to end so we can decide whether we're going to put them in or not. And Randy's like, oh, I don't think you're going to have to worry about Washington State. And then, oh, here we go. Oregon State can't do anything for 3 straight drives, and Washington State keeps scoring, and it's amazing they win. And it's like, all right, well, this is going to be fun. Hopefully they can keep winning so that Apple Cup game means a heck of a lot at the end of the season.
No kidding.
Do what?
I said, no kidding.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so let's move on to the NFL side of things here. Let's start with some news. Percy Harvin deciding to come out of retirement to re-sign with the Buffalo Bills. This is really surprising to me. Just out of nowhere.
Very weird. And I get it. Yes, Buffalo is desperate for wide receiver help. They really need it. But and I understand the history. Percy Harvin has had some good chemistry with Tyrod Taylor, but this guy being away, not being, around the team, not getting the work in, how soon is he going to be back in this thing anyway? I'd almost want to find somebody that was in training camp with Buffalo, or maybe make a trade if you really need it and you really feel like you got to have somebody who's solid. Trade a 7th round draft pick for a guy that's a slot receiver somewhere, or someone you think a lot of that maybe another team doesn't value as much. I just think there's other ways to get guys. Percy Harvin has had a terrible list of injuries, concussions. I think he's had hip surgery. This guy has had a lot of things go wrong for him in an early career and pretty much a short career. So I am kind of dumbfounded by this. I'm kind of dumbfounded that Percy Harvin's even really considering it, besides probably just the payday that he's going to get coming out of this. I don't really honestly see, Randy, where this is going to benefit Buffalo in the short term. Maybe long term if he can stay healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, if he can somehow stay healthy and stay in shape and, comes in ready to go, it's going to take a few weeks to get ready, but like you said, they have no playmakers there. Losing Sammy Watkins completely made their offense one-dimensional, and even that side is very banged up with LaShawn McCoy, and they're looking for anything right now to stay relevant in the wild card. Even Rex Ryan has come out and saying, the division's lost. They're just trying to find a way to get one of those 2 wild card spots. So I honestly think it's more, however, of him off the field helping some of these young receivers. Because, listen, Percy Harvin had a ton of talent. It was never in question what he could do on the field when healthy. It was just his inability to stay healthy. So to me, it's more of like a Wes Welker signing to the Rams, where, yes, he's going to be on the field a bit and he's going to help there, but it's more in practice and it's more helping some of these dynamic receivers that they have, because they have a lot of speed all over the field, and he can help them, run routes a bit better. But I can't see him being like a dynamic player, but it could be a step forward for him.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, he was still playing at sort of a high level before he left before. So it's not like you couldn't have him come and do this again. It's all about, you can't get a concussion, you can't get anything like that, because that means he's going to be out, and then it could linger, and it's not like a lot of other people where they just get back in the next game or whatever. And that's a risk I guess you're taking. I'm sure they're not paying him a whole lot, so it's not a huge risk on the Bills, but it's a risk on him and his future life, after football. Speaking of guys coming back, Terrell Owens says he is around to help the Philadelphia Eagles if they need it.
And they probably hung up the phone on him.
Stop calling here.
Are you still trying to get back in here? Like, what's wrong with you?
You know what? Excuse me. If I'm the Philadelphia Eagles and Terrell Owens calls and says, "Hey, I want to help you," I would say, "Cool. Call Dallas. Go, quote unquote, help them. See if you can screw up what they have going on right now, please." That's how you could help the Eagles right now.
Very true. I don't disagree with that. Exactly how I would answer. Terrell Owens, he is a guy that's, a possible Hall of Famer. He has the numbers to back it up. He's got a great career behind him. Lots of controversy, which, it does affect what's going on. But what concerns me more is we've seen this guy is not really well perceived when it comes to coaching staffs, because a lot of times he gets in the locker room, causes a division, and there you go. Well, I get it. He wouldn't be a player. He'd be a coach or whatever they put him in as a consultant. Still, this guy's a little high-strung. He's got a lot of bad media surrounding him. It's just too much of a risk for any NFL team. I don't care if it's the Cleveland Browns. You don't consider this. He's just not that kind of guy. I think he just wants back in the league. Money is probably, a reason, but not only that, he wants to be back in the spotlight. And right now, this is the first time we've heard of Terrell Owens, and I can't tell you how long.
Yeah, exactly. It just seems like he wanted to get himself back in the spotlight again. Just like, why?
And why not go to San Francisco? Why offer Philadelphia this opportunity? San Francisco is where you started this thing out. Come on.
Before he had all the controversy, I guess he wants to create some cash with that. Certainly.
Yeah.
So Cam Newton, after the game against Arizona, says he's tired of not getting calls for roughing and other calls he's not getting. And the officials are saying, Dean Blandino in particular, who's the vice president of officials, says that you get more protection in the pocket when you're in passing posture. If you leave the pocket, you're in running posture, you're going to lose protection. I think that's one of the issues. When you have a quarterback that does run more often, there are more designed runs or scrambles, you do lose that protection of getting those calls. Cam Newton says there's smaller guys that are getting these calls. Why not him?
And you know what? I 100% agree with Cam Newton here. You watch him, yes, when he scrambles, he loses some of the protection, but you still have to protect the quarterback a little bit. He is getting drilled. He's getting hit late. I watched a play on Sunday where a defensive player went right at the ankles of Cam Newton. I'm pretty sure that's a penalty in the NFL right now. It's like anything from the knee down or the neck up is, a no-go for quarterbacks. Yet, because it's Cam Newton, it was allowed. I just think he's very frustrated because of how much he got hit in that first game and how much it became an issue and everyone started talking about it and nothing changed. And then they go on by and everything finally starts clicking. Yet here he is just getting thrown around by Arizona in a lot of times in plays that would have been called for penalties. I mean, how many penalties would have been called if it was Tom Brady back there compared to Cam Newton, or if it was Peyton Manning in the last few years, or somebody with such stature? But if it's Cam Newton or like a Ben Roethlisberger, like the big, athletic quarterbacks, they don't get the calls the same, whether they're in the pocket or not.
Yeah, and I get the frustration, and trust me, watching the first game of the season, I felt like Cam Newton was completely robbed. I know 2 headshots that I can think of right now.
Yeah, there's that one where he gets absolutely whacked in the head.
Yeah,
and they
exactly. And you know what? I get that. And there's been other quarterbacks in the league who've complained about hits that have not been, flagged, and I get that. I think Cam Newton has a point. I definitely do. I want to say this, though. There's a whole montage of video that you can watch of other quarterbacks in this league, tall, small, whatever you want to call them, who've been getting hit, and really there should be flags on those same hits, and they're not. So he's not the only one. I kind of feel like he's making it about him, but I think he would stand a little bit better and have better footing if he said we instead of me. And
he's not going to say it about we, though.
Well, I know, but that's not a good PR move, and it's also not a good way to get the NFL to change things. They're going to just say, oh, you're just being a crybaby. When you start pointing out other guys in the league and you start saying, look, Drew Brees got hit here. This guy got hit over here. Carson Palmer got injured because this guy knocked him here. Then maybe they'll start paying attention to you more because you're bringing up a players' association type thing instead of just, hey, this is just me talking. So I'm not taking any of the way from what he's saying here. I agree, Cam Newton, you've been robbed on a few plays. A few plays that you complained about, maybe not. I mean, everybody does it. Everybody's going to say, oh, I deserve a flag on this one. You may not, but I think that the bottom line here is maybe PR-wise he can help himself, and a fellow quarterbacks by maybe using we instead of me so much.
That's fair. I mean, yeah, like you said, if you make it more into a quarterback situation, not just a Cam Newton situation, people will pay attention to it more, but that's the point. He is trying to make it about himself because he feels like he's the one that gets the worst. So,
can I want to bring this up, and this is something that may never happen, and it probably won't, but I think in these type of situations, because the NFL does not want to become flag football, even though they're going to have to try if they're going to protect everybody they want to protect. But saying that, I think this is a situation where you should have an official review. Maybe you don't let them review, anything else besides this, but maybe let them review things like this where you can
like
have
college?
A coach. Yeah, like the target, they do targeting in college, but yes, you're right. I think they can review quarterback hits and say, look, we really believe our quarterback was in danger. Here's the green flag. You throw it on the field, and they review that play with the quarterback. Does not go for the receivers, does not go for the running backs, just quarterbacks. If you're worried about that so much, do that.
What do you think, Randy?
If they can make it go quickly, I'm okay with it, but we don't need any more stoppages. But people have already tuned out of these games. Ratings are far lower than we've seen. But I agree, they need to come up with a way, if they're going to protect the quarterbacks, they need to do it for everybody. That's the main thing I've come out of all of this. Whether you're a whiny quarterback or an outspoken one or a quiet one, it doesn't matter. I mean, rules are rules. If you can't get hit below the knee, then Cam Newton should have gotten a flag thrown for him getting hit low by Calais in that game against Arizona. It's a mess, and hopefully him talking to Roger Goodell today will help solve something. But I who knows?
Jamaal Charles back on IR again, and the Chiefs signed Bishop Sankey, which I think that's just kind of cover. But at this point, if you're the Chiefs, do you have to think about just cutting Jamaal Charles? Is he really ever going to be the same guy again? He just keeps getting injured.
It's tough to say. I wouldn't say cut him, but and make sure that you have the future ready. And they have Sharkanders West and Spencer Ware back there. Ware dealing with concussion issues right now, but they have 2 decent running backs. They added Bishop Sankey just as, extra support there and a roster spot. But, let him get healthy and bring him back next season and kind of see where you're at. But I wouldn't just straight cut him. He still has talent. I mean, the little bit he played, he still showed that he has the ability. It's just his body's breaking down.
Yeah, exactly. This guy is a really talented running back. He's just his body cannot hold up, and I hate to say it, but he may need to look into either finding another way of getting himself ready for the season. If this is just something that's completely nagging him, maybe he considers taking the Arian Foster route. And I don't want to see him retire. I really don't. I love Charles. I think he's like I said, a really talented running back. It's just, I don't know how long the Kansas City Chiefs can be this patient. And how much of this do you want to deal in and year out, especially with the contract you're paying this guy? Well, you can get some young running backs in this league for a halfway decent price and get actually a majority of your season played by those same guys and not be in and out all the time with them. So this sucks for Charles. I hope for the best for him, but I think he's on that ledge right now of may have to leave this game.
That's sad. And, considering someone that did leave the game, one Houston great does it last week. This week, another Houston great decides to leave the game. Andre Johnson retiring after I thought he'd played decently with the Titans this year, but he decides to call it a day as an NFL player. He had his years where he was great, certainly. I mean, he helped me win a fantasy league my first year of playing fantasy, so I mean, this guy is he was great for Houston. He was the DeAndre Hopkins before you had DeAndre Hopkins for Houston, and it's kind of sad that era is just kind of going by for the Texans now.
Yeah, it's a big bummer. I love Andre Johnson. I've always enjoyed watching him play, and he was such a physical and talented player when he played for the Houston Texans. And to be honest with you, it's a sad day because of the fact that there's still a lot of talent in the guy. I just think that he's kind of in a situation where he knows he's slowed down. He's not able to help the team as much as he wants to. And I think, there's a point where you have to understand you're not really doing yourself any good getting banged up for not much coming out of it. So it's kind of weird at the same time, retiring right now. I don't know why you wouldn't wait till the end of the year, but I guess you just, he's done.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the stats this year, and he only has the 9 receptions, 2 of them for touchdowns. Hasn't made a catch in the last 3 games, was only targeted twice in the Indy game, in Cleveland and Jacksonville game, which you'd think are weak defenses. He doesn't even get targeted once. I doubt he was even on the field that much. So I can see him going, okay, obviously I'm wasting my time here, time to move on to other things. But I'm with you guys. He was an amazing talent. Obviously, in the days of fantasy, we pay attention to the offensive players a lot more. But 5 seasons with Houston with over 100 receptions, gets 70 touchdowns in his career. He was an amazing player for a team that could never really get over that hump. They were always known for that great defense, and Andre Johnson was really the glue on that offense before getting old. But he's 35. It's his time. Yes, I guess in a way you could wait for the end of the season, but it was winding down for him, and I think he could tell. So good for him to go out on his terms and allow Tennessee to find a replacement and continue on, because they've been a great story this season too.
They have. And another big story concerning the trade deadline is here. And normally you don't really have a whole lot of movement on the trade deadline for the NFL. It's not like the NBA or baseball or whatever. The New England Patriots just out of nowhere trade Jamie Collins to the Cleveland Browns for a 3rd-round pick. I mean, just... the Jets having to escape this trade, but the Cowboys have to deal with it if he's going to be ready and going in that system already for this game. Man, this is just weird. He wanted Von Miller money, and they said no.
No,
Yeah.
they didn't say no. They just said, yeah, you can have it, just in Cleveland.
Cleveland may not pay him that much either. They're all about that money ball.
Well, Cleveland, I think, has a better opportunity. I think they have the wallet size that they can actually take care of that contract, and they may actually have a GM who feels comfortable signing him to a deal in the realm of a Von Miller. I personally, I would have a hard time doing that. Yes, he's a super talented player. He's a guy that could definitely anchor your defense and really give them an opportunity to be really good, but saying that, I mean, it's not going to be just his team. He's going to have to be surrounded by other great players, and you can't pay him this huge contract and expect to pay other people dimes and nickels just to make this one guy happy. This is something that I've heard talked about before, and I get why maybe Cleveland wants to do this. Cleveland wants to get this guy on their roster, convince him that this is the right place for him, and then put the money in his pocket, maybe even before March when his contract will be concluded. I think that they're hoping they can go ahead and get him in negotiations, get him ready for a long-term deal, instead of having to wait and compete with other teams to get him on board. And that makes sense. It does. And you didn't give, I guess, something away that you didn't really feel like you were going to lose, because they were going to get compensatory picks this next year. They were. They know that already. I think they felt like that they didn't lose too much in this trade. But it's also, what kind of smart contract can you come out of this with? And I think they could probably talk him into a decent contract, especially if they're going to be very generous with this guy. Like I said, not a bad move. They needed guys like this on their defense. It's just that, are you going to be willing to pay the price at the end of the day?
Yeah, absolutely. And, everyone's just going to be shocked by this because they trade him for peanuts, basically, and a few draft picks. But that's what New England does. They do this all the time, where we get surprised, especially with defensive players, that they just move them along for draft picks and next man up mentality. This is not the first time the Patriots have traded away a big name defensive player. This one just kind of, came out of nowhere and really took us by surprise. But I'm with Gary as far as Cleveland goes. Listen, they are still the laughingstock. They're 0-8, but most of that is just because they can't have the same starting quarterback for more than 2 weeks at a time. There's so many injuries going on, plus the injuries to Corey Coleman, and Terrell Pryor has been banged up as well. So that offense has just been a complete mess, and the defense is young. So you get somebody like Collins in there to help them out and grow, give him the big money contract and say, you are the leader of this defense. You're going to be this veteran presence for a long time as we rebuild. You're our centerpiece, and let's go and do this. I think he might be happy. Is he going to be happy the rest of the season? Of course not. He went from a team that most likely is going to go to the Super Bowl to a team that's going to most likely have the number one pick. But as long as he looks long term and understands that, I love what Cleveland has been doing as far as making their team better in a few years. I think he might be in a decent spot.
Yeah, certainly. We'll have to see if the Browns actually offer him that big deal, and if he takes that big deal, because certainly there's going to be other teams that actually have probably better chances at winning the next year that are going to be coming after him. So
Exactly, and I want to point out, there's some fans out there who say, "Well, why is my team making this kind of a deal? We could really use a really great linebacker. Or, man, we really need a big receiver. Man, why don't my team trade for that?" A lot of times you're seeing these trades happen because, just like Collins' situation, they're at the end of their contract, and teams are trying to get whatever they can out of that. That way, they don't have to worry about paying that guy next year, and they get something for free out of it. And that's what, the Patriots were smart. They're very successful. Belichick does this all the time. But really, in essence, the Browns are renting him. They're renting Collins until they can get a deal with him. And if Collins didn't want to work with him, they'd be screwed, because they'd give up something. But I'm just saying that's what a lot of people. So you understand that's why your team may not be doing this, because they don't want to rent somebody for 2 months.
No, and listen, if you are a fan of one of those teams and you're like, why did the Browns get him? Because the Patriots aren't stupid. They're not going to trade Collins, a great defensive player, to a contender where he can come back and fight them. They're going to trade them to Cleveland, where, if he does sign with them, which he would have went somewhere else after this season anyways, then whatever. But this season, he poses zero threat. They're going to get decent draft picks out of it. To me, it's a win-win on both sides because this is just what New England does on defense. People bash them all the time. No, you should pay your players and all this, but they make it work. You come in, you play for them. If you get too big for your britches, we move on and we put somebody else, and we show that you weren't that big of a deal to begin with.
Yeah, nobody makes you feel more like you're not that big of a deal to begin with than Bill Belichick. After he trades you. Speaking of those kind of deals, the Minnesota Vikings, after losing the Chicago Bears on Monday night, with Jordan Howard going for 202 rushing yards, man, this dude is going off for the Bears, and Jay Cutler also throwing a touchdown, which his wife then goes on Twitter to say, "Can everybody shut up now?" No, they're not going to shut up about Jay Cutler unless he actually, wins a playoff game or something with the Bears, because great, he does it in one game. Every other game, he's sucking it up for the Bears. So there's a lot of thought right now of the Browns are shopping around Joe Thomas, who is a very good offensive lineman, and the Vikings have offensive line problems all over with all these injuries. They've all of a sudden gone from the talk of the league to 2 big losses in 2 weeks, and trade deadline's coming up, and they're weighing options as to, do you do this where you trade for that offensive lineman? The problem is they already spent, big picks on Sam Bradford. Do you spend one on him? And then they also only got $50,000, I think, in money that they can sort of spend to kind of add anything to that deal for Joe Thomas. So if you're the Vikings, do you go after that offensive tackle, or do you just make with it in-house and see what you got? They do want to win now.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, if they don't make a move now, right at the trade deadline, then my view on the trade that they had for Sam Bradford stands. That it was a terrible move and it was reactionary. Because listen, what better time than to go all in now than the way the NFC looks right now? How many teams right now in the NFC can you say are legit Super Bowl contenders? The way they're structured right now. Now, we can go back and go, well, if Seattle gets the offense going, they are. If Arizona can get things figured out, they are. If Green Bay can get healthy, they're a contender. But right now, the way they're structured, they're not. Minnesota has a chance to pull away and be one of the top 2 teams with Dallas in the NFC. Their issue right now is their offensive line's banged up. Go fix it. If you were so worried about winning now and trading everything away for Sam Bradford, who I didn't think was that big of a step up, yeah, he's better than Sean Hill, but I didn't think he was going to go out and win you games. Go out and spend even more and fix your offensive line and go out and try to win this season. Why not sell out in a season where these other teams are struggling, then go, well, we'll sell out a little bit, but now it's just too much. No, go all in. Let's go.
Totally agree. You're wasting Sam Bradford if you're having him go back there and know that he's going to get whacked every play. You might as well just have left Sean Hill back there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I get where people are coming from on that as well, and Minnesota's going to be smart with their decisions, and if they really feel like they can be a contender and they can actually go far by adding an offensive lineman, and they're willing to give up, whatever it's going to take to give up enough to survive in the next year's draft or in the future, do it. If you really feel like you're there, these guys are completely right. You cannot waste your time with Sam Bradford, a guy you gave up already some, big picks for, just to sit here and watch him get pounded into the ground. It's pointless. It has no sense to it. So whether you make decisions within trades or you make decisions amongst your organization where you can find a way to protect this guy, you've got to do it. But, hey, I mean, it's not a bad idea to go get one, but at the same time, the team has to be thinking about their future. And I'm not so sold that they believe Sam Bradford is their future.
Well, I mean, I would hope you still think that, why can't I think of his name right now? The Bridgewater is your future still.
Mm-hmm.
That,
But reports lately are worrisome that he may never be able to play again. I mean, I would hope that's not the case, but there are reports that this injury is so bad and just the worst kind of way that he just may never be the same again.
Oh, so sad.
Yeah, that's really sad. He was starting to make some strides there. It's just sad to hear on that front. And the last one here, the Packers sign Niall Davis and within 2.5 hours release him and then sign C.J. Spiller.
No. Hold on. You're close. The Packers released Niall Davis. The Jets won him on waivers. They were the ones that then cut Niall Davis and signed C.J. Spiller.
Sorry.
But yes, the Jets went through their own little running back carousel in a matter of 2.5 hours. For reasons, I guess. I guess maybe they didn't think they were going to win the Niall Davis sweepstakes. Oh, man.
I
guess
know,
not.
C.J. Spiller has not been good at all for any team he's played since that injury at Buffalo. I mean,
to me, he works well with New York. It's why they picked up a Kyrie Robinson, which that didn't work out as well. I'm not saying C.J. Spiller, is going to work for the Jets exactly, but Forte and Bilal Powell are basically the same kind of running back. You get C.J. Spiller, who has a bit more speed, and it could probably play special teams for you. The young, I can't remember his first name, but it's not Brandon Marshall, but there's another Marshall on the Jets team who does special teams, and he has been dreadful this season. Maybe they're bringing in C.J. Spiller to do special teams.
Yeah, maybe. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, they could be. That could be the possibility. I mean, this guy has been noted as being a really good special teams player. And I think that, anything helps when it comes to special teams. So, I mean, that could be the possibility here.
All right, so let's go into some Week 8 stuff here. We get another tie, guys.
We almost had
tie.
We almost had two.
27-27 in London this time, so at least they got a good game. Dustin Hopkins misses a 34-yard field goal. I know you had a rant on kickers, Randy.
It was more Mike. It's one of those interesting things that has happened this year where just kickers are having issues with the easy kicks, just with, when it comes down to it. Maybe they're revolting. We had that preseason talk the NFL had the preseason talk where they were thinking about maybe, bringing in the goalpost, making it more narrow, making it tougher on them. And they were going, no, look how tough it is. We can't kick anything. Please don't do that. And then they'll just go back to normal when they decide not to. I don't know. But, and listen, that 6-6 tie from Seattle and Arizona, I wasn't here to talk about that, but that was just a different kind of a game. Yes, for fantasy purposes, it was dreadful. That the overtime was hilarious with some of the easy kicks that were missed. I hated some of the play calling that was made in overtime, but I actually enjoyed that game because of the defensive battle that those two were going through. This one, as you said, completely different. Both teams were able to move the ball extremely well. Then you get into overtime, and Washington has their chances to win, and we're unable to do it. And we'll probably talk about the other game that almost ended in a tie, and a certain coach in that game made a gutsy decision to play for the win. And I have to say that Gruden for Washington did the exact opposite, where he let the clock run out, so he could throw a Hail Mary at the end, and he was playing for the tie and not to lose. Whereas over there in Oakland, they were playing just let's win this game. So interesting coaching decisions this week as far as
Jack Del
overtime
Rio's
goes.
done that this year.
Yeah.
Hey, you play to win the game, and Jack Del Rio does that. And 513 yards from Derek Carr, 4 touchdowns, ridiculous, just ridiculous. I mean, Kirk Cousins got 458 in that game, but I mean, just that's nuts. And I mean, they really shouldn't have had that much problem with the Buccaneers, but the Raiders don't stop anyone. So.
Well, listen, as far as this, and Gary, I don't know how you feel about this, but Oakland's been the best story in the NFL. We all thought they were going to take a step up. I didn't think they were going to be ahead of Denver or Kansas City, but I thought they were going to improve. But what they have done amazing this year is this is their 5th time they went on the road to the East Coast and gotten a win. I actually picked Tampa Bay in this game because I thought, the 5th one was just going to be too much. It was back-to-back games to the East Coast and that early time slot. And I think that's why they really struggled. I do think they're a much better team than Tampa Bay, but they have to be wearing out, especially on the defensive side. But what Derek Carr and Amari Cooper and this offense is doing is just phenomenal.
Yeah, it really is. And, I really came into the season with high hopes and really a lot of thoughts of this team could be the best in this entire division. I really wasn't sure about the Denver Broncos. I thought losing a few key pieces of the defense could possibly make them, a little bit more viable to be just like any other defense, not dominant. And that didn't take place, but still we do have a Raiders team that's still loaded with talent, still doing things to surprise us. I think we've talked earlier this year, just in this, early season, that they're still a young team. They still got a long ways to go, and the defense has had some big letdowns. But, man, it's been amazing the way they've handled things on the East Coast, the way that they've beaten some teams that really people did not give them credit for, that they could do that. And so I still look at this team as a very dangerous team. I think that the Oakland Raiders, are going to still be underdogs when they come up to basically almost anybody, except maybe some of the teams that are not real, doing real well in Cleveland, But I still look at them as a team that's, young and very impactful. And I think they can beat anybody in this league if they just really, put everything together.
Yeah, we were talking more about the defense was going to be what we were going to be talking about, and it's been the offense. It's been Derek Carr. It's been the Derek Carr show to whoever is going to catch the ball because he doesn't care. Hold on.
Yeah. Well, I never really thought that it was going to be about the defense. Me personally, I really always did believe in the offense. I always thought Latavius Murray was a guy that was underutilized at times, and also a guy that no one really believed in. And, he's had a pretty decent year himself. These receivers, we've all talked about him last year, and now this year, once again, they're doing well. Carr is one of my favorite quarterbacks in the league. I think this guy is going to be up there in the big names when it comes to later down the line in his career, because I think he's got all the intangibles to be a high-octane offense-type quarterback. So, I maybe I'm, blowing their bubble up a little bit, but I feel like that offense is good. You guys were right. The defense was something we were kind of thinking we're going to be better than they are, but I really honestly put my belief in that offense more than anything.
Well, yeah, and then Derek Carr deserves the MVP talk he's getting right now because he's been tremendous this year, and hopefully that continues for him because if not, Tom Brady's going to run away with the thing again. But let's not go too far though. The Chiefs are doing their thing too. It's the Colts, so you got to take that a little bit with a grain of salt at being the Colts, but that division is ridiculous. The AFC West. The Broncos beat the Chargers in that second game. You kind of expect that one, but man, the Chiefs just whoop on the Colts 30-14, and this is with I think Alex Smith had to go out of the game 2 different times. Nick Foles comes in and throws for 2 touchdowns.
Hell, Nick Foles almost looked better than Alex Smith. And yes, Alex Smith leaves the game twice due to concussion concerns. They say he has a concussion the second time and then come out the next day and go, no, actually, there was no concussion. I don't know what they were thinking. It was probably a precautionary deal, but they didn't need him. I thought Nick Foles looked just fine. He might be the best backup quarterback in the league. We talked about him a bit on the fantasy podcast yesterday that, if he does end up playing on Sunday, I believe they play Jacksonville, a terrible defense, I think he would do just fine in that case. I think he has a bit of a stronger arm than Alex Smith and moved the ball around surprisingly well. But this whole division, even San Diego, who I thought was going to be in the toilet this year, yes, they're only 3-5, but can you name a better 3-5 team in the history of football right now? Just they're in every game. None of us really thought that they were going to beat Denver at Denver in the rematch game, but they stayed in it the entire way. We're only down 8 late. We're just unable to make that big play, to even it up. But they're right there. Denver's playing great. Oakland is amazing on offense. It's tough to think that any wild card team is going to come out of anywhere but the AFC West right now.
No, it's very true. I mean, just the way all these teams are playing right now, the Chargers they'd have to really win a lot of games to be really in consideration, but between the top three, that's going to be really rough for any of these AFC teams to get to that point and then keep being able to sustain it too, that's another thing that's the issue. The Packers finally look at the Packers again, but it's not enough to beat the Atlanta Falcons. I thought Aaron Rodgers probably had his best game of the season here. He was even the leading rusher in this game. That shows you how much they need a running back. But, the Falcons just keep surprising.
Yeah, this was the shootout that you expected it to be. I watched every snap of this game live with the girlfriend who was losing her mind, and it was just back and forth. Listen, Aaron Rodgers is doing everything he can. They are so banged up. Ty Montgomery was a late scratch with his sickle cell issues that he's going through right now. No Randall Cobb in the game. No running back to be mentioned. I mean, now Davis was out there, but he was awful, and that's why they got rid of him. Their fullback, Ripkowski, was their leading rusher minus, Aaron Rodgers. But I think Rodgers has finally figured it out that most defenses are just playing soft. They're allowing him all the time in the world, but they're making sure to just blanket his weapons and making him force the ball, and he stopped doing that. He stopped forcing it, and he will allow all of that time to be able to read the field 3, 4, 5 times until something finally breaks. And you saw that with Atlanta. I mean, he didn't really force the ball into any situation, and if nothing was there after a while and the pocket broke down, then he took off and ran. So I like the way he played, but Matt Ryan and this Falcons team hasn't quite hit that second half lull that we have come to expect from this team, where they start out strong and fall off. They went toe-to-toe with Green Bay and were the better team.
Yeah, and you were right when you said this is probably the best game, Sean, that Aaron Rodgers has played, and I thought that this was going to be a Green Bay Packer victory. I really felt like that, and, we got really close into the game, and it was just, Matt Ryan doing what Matt Ryan's done this year, and that's find a way to make, the game successful for the Falcons. And that's, how he did it. They went down the field and took care of business. And Sanu, man, what a pickup in the offseason. They, found a way to utilize this guy, and it's been really successful for him so far.
Yeah, certainly. And some surprising results here. The Saints win at home against the Seahawks, and the Texans, we talk about the Raiders being 5-0 away. The Texans are 5-0 at home. They don't lose at home, 20-13 over the Lions. They really stifled Matthew Stafford. I cannot say Matt because he will come and, a ball of fire will come at this podcast here if you say anything about Matthew, apparently. So, yeah, I mean, the two games I had picked the other team.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll let Gary talk about Osweiler and that shitty mess. That game was awful.
He's a lot ready.
I'll focus on the game that I actually got right. I picked New Orleans to win that game against Seattle. And listen, it was just the battle of two terrible sides of the ball. Seattle's offenses look terrible. Russell Wilson is not healthy, won't be healthy the rest of the season, and it's really affected them. They don't have the playmakers that they've had. There's no balance there, and it's just off. And it showed because New Orleans' defense is one of the worst, if not the worst, in the league, and they still couldn't get anything going. Jimmy Graham doesn't have much of a game here as well. And the big story to me is I never knew Sean Payton was a Tom Coughlin fan. But apparently he was, because Mark Ingram fumbled one of his first snaps of the game and then rode the pine and watched as they gave Tim Hightower more carries in this game than they've ever given Ingram in all this season. I mean, Ingram has never been given 26 carries in a game this year. He fumbles, and they're like, okay, this is what you get for fumbling. We're going to showcase your backup and just let him run on a tough Seattle defense, and Hightower did his job. You know, it came down to a play late where I was surprised at the play call where they didn't go inside to Jimmy Graham for a jump ball. They went to the back corner, and Russell Wilson overthrew it a little bit. But, you know, if you're Seattle, you have to now be worried about this offense. Yes, it's on the road, but it's against a terrible defense, and they could do nothing.
That's sad.
Yep. Yeah, you know, you wonder how far that Seattle's defense can take that team, and they're not doing it as much as they used to. You could say, well, they could play this bad on offense and still win that game because the defense would score a touchdown, or even special teams would help them out. But it's just not working that way anymore.
Man, Earl Thomas was making some bad tackles too. It's just something like going, what the hell is going on here?
Absolutely. But speaking of defenses having to carry things, I want to know, Gary, how in the hell can the Houston Texans defense carry the 6'7" piece of shit that's their quarterback?
Good God. We try to be professional through this show, and then you have to come in here and just trash Osweiler.
Well, to be honest, I think a lot of people are thinking the exact same thing. They're just not willing to say it. And, I really do question that same thing myself, Randy. They've definitely given him a prop. They've propped him up so much right now that he's just a cardboard cutout at times, and they just do all the work. And here you go. I mean, I also wonder how much, they would fare if they didn't have some decent, talent at running back too. I mean, Lamar Miller has not had the year that we wanted him to have, I think, especially in fantasy. You expected him to be doing 100-yard games on a regular basis. In this matchup, he only had 56 yards. Kind of bums you out. But, I mean, I think even with that threat...
Why is he splitting carries with Alfred Blue?
Well, he had to this game. He came in with a bum shoulder and almost didn't play in this game. So this was a case of he toughed it out. So that's why the split here. But listen, I apologize for the cussing. But listen, from now on, Brock Osweiler is the great mighty Pooh from the Conquer games to me, because that's what he is. He's awful.
DeAndre Hopkins can't even get 50 yards because Osweiler is terrible.
Exactly where I was going. DeAndre Hopkins, who's been an amazing talent, played for awful quarterbacks last season and was still amazing. And they bring in Brock Osweiler, and he can't do anything.
Brian Hoyer is
There's
better
one
than Brock
difference.
Osweiler. You shouldn't call him an awful quarterback. Just saying.
Well, then why'd you sign him for so much money?
Because they're dumb.
Because Brock Osweiler stole from the Houston Texans.
And isn't it funny, their own owner, the Houston Texans owner, says that Osweiler is basically still a rookie. Do you really spend that much money on a guy you're going to call your franchise and now sit here and say, oh, yeah, well, he's still kind of a rookie? What a stupid excuse. I mean, that is just an excuse. You're not going to be able to say that once this year's over, and you can't say it next year.
Bill supposed to be a quarterback guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, what the heck? The last 2 years... haven't been showing you're a quarterback guy, really, if that's what you're supposed to be doing here. And speaking of quarterbacks, the Cowboys quarterback did not have a very good game. But he showed Brock Osweiler how it's done. You go and you win the game in overtime, I mean, Houston still won the game. I shouldn't say that, but he grew up and took it in overtime. Ezekiel Elliott also helped, and that defense did their part as well. And I mean, number one, the thing that stood out to me was Jason Garrett going for it on that 4th and 1. That was the big play, other than Sean Lee stopping them on that 6-yard loss or whatever. But this was a total team effort. It's the first time that Dak had issues where he didn't look like a big deal, but it didn't, stop him. He actually went and kept playing and kept fighting through. And I said this in the game. I said I'm worried about the Eagles' defense getting to him and causing problems, and they did. And to his credit, he is now a grown man. I don't think you can call him a rookie anymore. That man is a grown man.
Yeah, and looking at this, I mean, this is the kind of down to earth situation that people wanted to see Dak in, and the Eagles defense does not get some credit from what they do on the defensive line. They keep getting credit sometimes more on the secondary, which they deserve, and the defensive line, without one of their biggest guys, just completely gave that Dallas offensive line all the work they needed to have in this game, and really getting pressure as much as possible on Dak, making him throw the ball early. Inaccuracy was a big problem for him early in the game. I think another big part of Dak's problem in that game was he kept looking for Dez Bryant. I mean, 14 targets to go to Dez Bryant. That screams, hey, I'm the big superstar receiver. Hey, rookie, throw it to me. And that hindered Dak so much. And if you watch the last part of this game, that went away, and Dak was efficient. So, I don't know. I just really feel like,
Dez still caught the big touchdown, though. That's why
he
you got
did.
Dez.
Yeah, but, use him for those moments. Don't force it. And, this is a learning situation. I think Philadelphia fans are jumping up and down in anger, and they also are kind of getting a little silly. I've heard some Philadelphia Eagle fans even say, Dak
Fletcher
is better.
Cox came out and said, the better team lost.
Yeah,
no,
but
the better team doesn't lose. You lost. You are not the better team.
Yeah, just but saying. People are I totally agree with that. But I also look at this and say Carson Wentz, you got to be thankful that you have this guy, Philadelphia. He's still not making mistakes. Dak threw an interception, a key interception that led to Philadelphia getting points eventually and going into halftime and being, the leader.
Well, and then Dallas had that fumble too.
Yeah. But I'm just saying there's a few things here that takes place with Dak Prescott that doesn't take place with Carson Wentz. And so,
Wentz still throws interceptions.
Yeah, but not. I'm just saying in this game, they were giving him hard times about this game. But, man, I'm telling you, Carson Wentz was efficient in this game. He used his receivers as best as he could because they're not the best receivers in the league.
Well, it helps when you're just throwing slants all the time. They don't even throw 20 yards down the field.
They don't. But you know what? If it's working, it's working. You don't play in this league and do things that don't work, and that's what was working. So, hey, all power to them. I mean, they almost won the game.
Also helped. Darren Sproles helped them a lot.
But my point about this whole thing is don't jump off the Carson Wentz bandwagon just because you saw Dak Prescott win this game.
Oh, no.
And so
I don't think anybody should. I think definitely you're going to be seeing these two playing each other quite often for the next, 5-10 years or whatever. That's what I took out of this game, is both of them deserve to be where they're at. Now I don't know if the Cowboys would have lost if they would have been talking about Romo's ready for Cleveland, but it is what it is, and I'm sure Romo will play, and if not the Cleveland game and the Steeler game or whatever. But yeah, I mean, at least when it gets rough, he can still win you games, and that's what you didn't have last year.
Yeah, exactly. And, when I come away with this game is I don't lose any credibility for Philadelphia at all. This was a big game. It was a tough game, and Dallas just found a way to win it. But I really want to hear what you have to say, Randy, because I'm really kind of curious how you fall in this game and everything about it.
Yeah, actually, my biggest takeaway from this game was something that you brought up, Gary, and that was the fact that the one thing I was worried about happened. And yes, Des Bryant gets the big touchdown catch, but you could tell Dak Prescott was trying to force the ball to him. As you said, 14 targets in this game. Nobody else had more than 7, and he only caught 4 of them, which shows to me that he was trying to force it in there in times that he shouldn't have. Now, can they get things kind of ironed out as time goes on? Absolutely. As you guys said, they're playing Cleveland next week. Perfect time to kind of work on things. Not that hard of a team. Don't take them lightly, and make sure you still, put your foot in the ground and beat them. But, kind of work on the timing issues and everything there. Obviously, Ezekiel Elliott has surpassed my expectations by far. And that 1-2 punch is going to be amazing for years. And this rivalry is going to be amazing for years because Carson Wentz did just fine, especially with having very few weapons around him. Jordan Matthews is great. Darren Sproles is great in spurts, but Ryan Matthews has been awful. Your second best wide receiver in Philadelphia right now is Dorial Green-Beckham, who is a shun-off from Tennessee. Nelson Aguilar has been a disappointment. Zach Ertz has been a disappointment, and he still kept them in this game. And it just shows that this is going to be a rivalry between two quarterbacks that's going to go on for a long time as long as both teams are able to hold them. This could be the next Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. They just happen to be in the same division. And it was so much fun to watch. And this game was one of the better games of the entire weekend because it was close all the way through. Neither team, made that crucial mistake. Dak does throw the interception by the end zone near the end of the half, trying to force it in there. But both teams played extremely well. As you said, Gary, they can both hold their head up high. The Eagles know they get one more crack at them at home later on this season to get it back. Losing a game in overtime against the division rival on the road is nothing to worry about or think that the sky is falling. And it's just the fact that all 4 teams in the NFC East are over 500 right now. They're all playing extremely well, and all of these games mean so much that, even losing a game like this is going to make the fan base cringe, especially in Philadelphia. But as you said, it's no time to worry, especially about Wentz. They're going to go through here. You get another tough game this week when they go to New York to play the Giants, and they got to get ready for that. But it was just a great game between 2 rookie quarterbacks that have just completely impressed me all season long.
Totally agree on that. And, Josh Huff as he sits there in a jail cell for being an idiot. Seriously, who walks around with hollow points, 6 of them, and then just expects you're not going to, get in trouble for it? Just saying. But, yeah, so that's pretty much week 8. Unless you want to talk about your Jets, Randy.
I really didn't want it. No.
Okay.
F them. F all of them. I would love. The only thing that I will say about the Jets-Browns game is I want the audio of Todd Bowles at halftime. That's what I want. That's all I want, because that first half was the first half from the Jets made the Washington State first half look like a masterpiece. It was embarrassing. It was tough to watch. I will say that nobody's really said it, but I am curious if Fitzpatrick's bell got rung a little bit more than they let on. If you did watch this dreadful game, I apologize for 1. But for 2, Fitzpatrick rolls out, gets smashed into the ground. His helmet comes off, and his face goes into the turf as you watch his helmet disintegrate into pieces as his chin strap comes out and the padding in it goes everywhere. They pull him out for what was going to be a play for Bryce Petty. They challenge the play, move it back to 4th down and punt, so we never actually see Petty fully in the game, and they say Fitzpatrick is fine. And he goes from there. But that first half, I'm pretty sure he was a little loopy if you go back and watch that play. But the offense was just inept, and I hate to say it, but the loss of Eric Decker is the biggest thing for the Jets this season. I mean, the offense is completely different. Anunwa has been great. Brandon Marshall has been okay. It has a bit of the drops, which, we know Brandon Marshall for. The running game's been fine, but Eric Decker just brought another element that really made it tough for defenses to stop. And without that, Fitzpatrick has less to go with. He doesn't have the arm to really fit it into places. He had the vision to find one of those three. And, now with two, you see how inept he is at pinpointing his throws like some other quarterbacks, and it's going to be tough. Thank God they came back and won the game, so they weren't the first defeat against the Cleveland team, but it was tough to watch, and I'm afraid it's going to be just as tough when they play Miami on Sunday, and I'm more looking forward to other games, let's just say that.
Josh McCown again looking good when he's quarterback of the Browns. So
yeah, absolutely.
Gonna be hard for them to. They'll probably put Kessler in, but it's hard to justify him getting taken out every time he plays well. But all right, that's gonna do it for us talking football on this evening. We'll be back on the Friday morning previewing Week 9 of the NFL, and of course also doing a preview for the next week in college football as well. Until then,
I hold on. I got one question for both of you before we go. On the record right now, who wins Game 7 tomorrow? Cubs or Indians?
Oh, geez.
I will go ahead and pick against what I want to happen because that's the way things work. I'll say Cleveland.
I think the Cubs will win.
I liked how the Cubs offense kind of got things going in Game 6. Really knocked the ball around the park, but Kluber has been great. I'm going to say the Indians in Game 7, but I'm so happy that this great series with all these storylines is going to a Game 7. I can't wait for it.
Yeah, me too. It's really nice to see this happen the way it's happened. Great series.
Well, see you later, everybody.
The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.